All right, we're going to start with approval of the Finance Committee minutes from the last meeting. I motion that we approve those meeting minutes. I need a second. Can I get a second? Okay, properly second. Any further comments? Okay, do I need to vote on that? Voice, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Hearing none, those minutes are approved. Let's see, moving on to our briefing items. Andy is going to kick us off with another good month.
All right, thank you. Yes, it is another good month. We'll report out on our February financials. As you all know, that's the second month of our fiscal year as well. We'll jump right in on slide 4. And you can see when it comes to passenger revenue, we had a good February, 29 days, which helps compared to our typical 28. But as we come out of the holidays and the winter season, we're seeing passenger revenue tick up as expected. We're close to budget, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the variances we're seeing in passenger revenue for February on a couple slides further. So on slide 5, you'll see the expense profile. No big surprises here. You'll see wages and fringes are slightly below our January average, and that is because of the shortened month. With a large hourly workforce, when you have 29 days in a month, you're going to have less on the wage fringe side, but no big surprises from the expense side of the ledger. On slide 6, we walk through the summary. As was mentioned, a very good month. Total revenue, $12.6 million, which is favorable to budget by about $150,000. Our expenses ran at $12.1 million, which was favorable by $734,000. That left us with the month with a surplus of $600,000, and that was favorable to budget by about $900,000. As we mentioned last month, sales tax is not, the receipt of sales tax and the volume of sales tax is not steady throughout the year. So we actually, if you divide the year up into the 12-month segments, we have some months where we had budgeted an overall monthly deficit, and we had some months where we had budgeted a surplus with a year-end budgeted projected surplus of about $2.5 million. So February was one of those months where we had budgeted a deficit for the month, and we actually experienced a surplus of about $600,000. So a very good month with respect to the bottom line. Ridership was slightly unfavorable to budget by 2.7%. On the revenue side, our total operating revenue was $1.7 million, which was favorable to budget by 13%, while ridership was unfavorable to budget. That might pose a question. Our revenue is not necessarily directly tied to ridership. In January and February, we had two phenomenons that kind of happen. One, we have a lot of bulk pass sale purchases. So agencies and businesses will buy 30-day passes in bulk, and we will recognize that revenue. And then we also have the beginning of the semester at CPS, where there's a lot of replacement passes, and that's when we recognize the whole year of revenue for that pass when that pass is accepted. So those two things pushed passenger revenue up at a greater rate than ridership. What's that?
You mean ridership not 100% correlated to revenue?
Not 100% correlated to revenue. Correct.
Didn't know.
Exactly right. With respect to non-transportation revenue, unfavorable by 5.6% due to the timing of our investment income. County sales tax, as mentioned before, will be on budget for the first quarter of the year until we get January actuals in April. So we'll wait to see how receipts in April turn up. On the expense side, I mentioned wages and fringes were slightly favorable to budget. A bright spot here, we had our fuel hedging presentation last month. We were able to purchase fuel hedges below budget, and some of those are now being realized. And so we were 18.5% favorable to budget with fuel, and parts and supplies tracking much closer to budget here in 2024. All other was favorable, and that is as typical due to timing of projects. If we turn to slide 7, as I mentioned before, if we just go straight to the bottom line, you'll see that $577,000 surplus for the month. compared to the projected $304,000 deficit, which is about a $900,000 swing to the positive. We're about $1.7 million to the positive based on projections so far year to date. Page 8 is very typical to what we saw last month, which is our investment of funds reserve summary. We have $178 million in reserve. The obligations are largely unchanged since unchanged since last month, reserving 173 of that for projects match and operating contingency, leaving us with about $4.7 million of unrestricted reserve. The only major change between this month and last month is the fund increased by about $4 million, which was a result of a reimbursement of federal funds for a bus purchase. That concludes the financial results for February. Happy to answer any questions.
I do have one question, Andy.
Yes.
I know you mentioned purchasing the CPS passes.
Yes.
That's all calculated at the beginning. And I know sometime during the year, I guess at the end of the school year, where they don't use all of those, how is that back in?
There is a true-up process that we go through. If there are passes that are unactivated, and then we have that true-up that happens near the end of the school year. So we start that here in a couple months. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? All right, we have one action item. Andy, you want to go ahead and explain that?
Sure. This is to appoint an alternate to the Ohio Transit Risk Pool. As you all know, we receive a lot of insurance, and especially our liability insurance, through the Ohio Transit Risk Pool. The Risk Pool requires that members have seats on the OTRP board. Daryl, as our CEO, is the board member representing SORTA on OTRP. They also asked that there's an alternate. We recently had a meeting with OTRP where we aligned some of the efforts with OTRP. John Ravazio, as COO, is the point person for the safety and risk and the daily operation of claims. And my role here would be to deal with the financial side of OTRP until of which time we have a CFO in place. So that was the thought of making me alternate to the OTRP Risk Pool board. And this action is required by our board in order to be recognized by the OTRP board.
I'll make a motion to add Andy as the alternate to the board. Thank you.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded. So we just need to do a roll call or voice. Okay, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, hearing none. Andy, you're approved to be on the board.
We need to approve.
Condolences.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and the investment of funds reports, if we go to page 1 on the SORTA side, you see that $178 million, which is invested with a weighted yield of 4.65%. You can, again, see that increase of about $4.5 million from last month, and that was reimbursement for bus purchase, as you can see. So no big surprises with respect to the SORTA investment of funds report. On page 2 is the infrastructure, the MTIF investment of funds report. You can see here there's a pretty significant change from last month, and that is taking quite a bit of money from the overnight investments and pushing it into the securities and CDs and longer term investments. That was discussed here last month. Kevin and his team did a cash flow analysis to make sure that we had enough liquidity to reimburse projects as they are implemented on the ground. And so you see quite a big move there. We now have $69 million in longer term investments, which is good for the fund.
What's that projected going to be when we take that out? I'm not sure in terms of how long, if that's 2 to 5, what is that?
Yeah,
like?
so right now it's all those CDs and securities, they have different maturities, right? And right now we have a 511 average days to maturity, right? So we're averaging around a year and a half, and we keep an eye on that pretty closely. The blended rate is 4.77%, or 4.44% for the securities. Yep.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I make a motion to improve the investment of funds. I need a second. Properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? No. Hearing none, investment of funds are approved. Next item would be new business.
I don't know if we want to do this here in planning and ops. I know that some folks have to leave before planning and ops, but there was a meeting yesterday that I wanted to update the group on related to Red Bike. And so wanted to have a quick conversation with folks. Mark Jeffries, you likely saw in the last week or two that they announced that they were not going to be reopening the system. That catalyzed Mark Jeffries to pull together a group. I jokingly called it the Coalition of the Willing before I was reminded that was an Iraq War reference. And so I'm going to call it the group of folks who want to save the system. That included a number of the foundations in town, GCF, Do Good, the Hale Foundation, Meet NKY, Interact for Health, Visit Cincy, sort of a who's who of folks who are aligned with this system. And Mark had two asks for the group, and Daryl and Andy were also there, so I may look to them to fill in some of the holes in my notes from the meeting. But there were two. Oh, I just turned my mic off, sorry. One was to identify resources enough to keep the system operating for one more year. And the second was, in that year's time, to work together as sort of key stakeholders to figure out what sustainability looks like, what 2.0 looks like from an operational and governance standpoint, and what would need to be true for that to exist long term. And so Mark started by noting that the city was in for $100,000. They needed about $500,000 to keep the system operating. You'll recall from our conversation last month that they get about 30% of their funds from the fare box, and so that the gap there is about $500,000 to stay open for the next 12 months. And it was a little bit like a scene from It's a Wonderful Life, where folks started saying, I could do this and I can do that, and the foundations stepped up pretty quickly to say we could put in, well, I'm looking at my notes, but between them, almost $200,000 from the foundations. The city was going to do $100,000. I suggested, as one board member, that I would like to see Metro match the city for 1 year in that investment, to put $100,000 on the table to keep this system alive, and that gives us the ability to play a central role in shaping what its future looks like. And I have a lot of questions that are not answered for me yet about what future operations look like and how they would align with our system. But we only get to answer those questions if we keep this thing moving for a year. And so my ask to this group would be that we can direct Daryl and Andy to work on a marketing sponsorship proposal that would invest $100,000 to keep Red Bike moving over the next year. There's a lot of questions I imagine folks have. I'm happy to answer sort of what's going on from the meeting perspective, defer to the team about how that would look from a budget perspective, but just want to put that on the table. I don't generally like to surprise folks with new business, but the meeting happened yesterday at 4 o'clock, and things are going to start moving pretty quickly if they want to reopen, and so I wanted to update the group. So let me pause there. My microphone has been off the whole time I was talking, so there's that.
So we covered this in planning and
Yeah,
ops last
yeah.
month, and we can talk about it here.
Yeah.
We had a ask from staff,
Yeah.
which was, how does this connect with what we do? And I wonder if we've had any more discussions on that, any determination. I don't want to put you on the spot, but that seems like a central part of this
Absolutely.
question.
Absolutely.
How does this connect to what Metro does?
Yeah, so with the help of Khaled's team and the SPDI group here at Metro, we've begun to try to answer that question. I think all parties agree that bike share is not 100% public transit, and it's also not 100% recreation, right? And so that's what we're trying to figure out, is where an estimate of really how many of these folks are using it fundamentally for transportation as opposed to recreation. There's not a lot of great data out there, and then you have to consider the different types of bike share systems that exist. So for example, if you have a dockless system, we saw a great report on a dockless bike share system, which is not what we have. So it's kind of hard to extrapolate that data to our sample. So we're beginning to try to pull information. There isn't a whole lot of data in this world, right? So I don't have a on-the-spot perfect answer for you, but we're moving down that path to learn more about the connection to transit and transportation. And again, where that balance is, we haven't concluded at this point in time.
Yeah, one of the things that came up in the conversation yesterday too was how we built our bike share system at the time we built it about 10 years ago was not around a transit system that was growing, right? So we built a point-to-point bike share system that broadly was, you could get on a bike and take your bike to your destination and use the bike for your full mobility. The systems that are more integrated with transit systems are ones that build around first last mile. So more embedded in neighborhoods, connecting up to the major corridors. Think about, if we're going to build BRT on Reading Road and having bike share docks in the part of College Hill that's not in the business district to get folks to Hamilton Avenue to take the bus. And so I think that's a clear reorientation for a bike share system in our region, is to actually start building around the bus system that we know is growing. We're one of the few, and so I think that's, from a 2.0 perspective, that would be one of my expectations, is that their operations would be more aligned to our system than they are today, for us to do anything beyond sort of what it is today. The second question I know was sort of the other big thing I heard from this group was wanting to see and hear the coalition that was supporting this, right? Making sure that we were not the organization that was being asked to for lack of a better term, sort of bail the water out of the boat. And I walked away from the conversation yesterday. I mean, the room was like oversubscribed in terms of people coming in with chairs, and between the corporate community and the foundations and the local governments, and then a number of individuals who have supported the Watson Way Trail and the Crown Initiative, willing to say, we're going to go back to our donors and ask them to write individual and personal checks to support this. It became pretty clear to me that there is a broader coalition than we were even talking about a month ago.
One of the other things that I heard in that meeting yesterday was the understanding that for Red Bike to survive in Cincinnati, some changes had to take place. So there was a lot of discussion around moving forward, the organization being set up very differently than the organization is today. So to continue the operation for the next year, but in the next year not to continue the operation as it is today, but to make some fundamental changes to what Red Bike is, how Red Bike works in the community, to make them sustainable long term. So I think what Pete is asking for today is a one-time help to keep Red Bike moving until they can make those fundamental changes to make this sustainable long term. And as far as his ask to this board, if this board were to approve it, staff could not add one additional penny without the board's approval.
I think
Well,
there are a lot of questions here. Dan.
I do think there'll be a lot of questions, but you have already provided some of the answers to the key ones. Number one, they asked us for 100,000, not 500,000, and you have quite a coalition there. And I think the sentiment with a lot of us here was that we didn't want to go solo in providing this money. We wanted significant matches and not to be the majority partner. The other is about the operational aspect. The key part was the operational aspect, and how I would trust some people in the transportation field to be involved with this. And as you said, we're different than a lot of communities in a positive way because of our commitment to BRT and the funding we put forth through Issue 7, of course. And I do see a likely connection between that last mile transportation and the other services we're providing. With the zoning changes the city has just put into place, they're trying to develop around our BRT lines, and with this Red Bike program, it would not be great to have it dismantled and then resurrected in a different way. Why not work with the program that exists and significantly change the operations of it? So I'm supportive in general.
At our in our February meeting, we did discuss this. We got through some numbers, and the data didn't support a financial contribution from this body at all. Not only because they're defunct in their revenue streams, and the fact that they've not forecasted when sponsorship was going to end, which is a serious issue that is solely the issue of that organization and its leadership. But it also didn't have the numbers being below 20% in actual usage on a daily basis, whether that be for recreation, whether that be for work or what have you. And so I tend to like the quantitative over the qualitative and the feel goods, because those are what really speak. So I think that there can be some movement and some supports that are indirect, be those marketing, perhaps leadership. We have a wealth of knowledge in terms of how transportation works, and kind of downloading and sharing that intel and that expertise and that knowledge base, I think, is going to be really critical, and how they try to resurrect that. But I think they've got some very serious, mechanics and structural challenges that they need to work through to be able to prove that we can, as a body who've been entrusted to shelter and guide these dollars from folks that have trusted us from issue 7, to then dump it into an entity, like that amount is, I in my personal opinion, I feel like that's egregious. I think that's a mishandling, because I think that there's a lot more steps before we get to that point. I think that there's certainly some integrations that need to happen on that last mile, but it certainly would demand many more, conversations and much more data that would actually look better to the good. Because right now, the old folks used to say you don't put good money after bad. You know what I mean? So we want to be able to recoup that investment in different ways, even in the ridership, and with the numbers that were presented, which I don't assume that they've changed, doesn't support that type of a decision. So that's where I am on it. I think that it's a tabling for more inquiry, and to really hold accountable and make sure that when and if we decide to make those investments, that we can be assured that they're going to be, they're going to have a return, and that it's going to be just one step in the evolutionary process. Because it's good that they've got the coalition, so that coalition can come through and should be able to get what they need.
Yeah, I heard, and I think I agree with a lot of your sort of longer-term sentiment issues about structure and operations, and alignment around what we're doing. Frankly, I think we have a lot that we can add, value-wise, from sort of evolving this system. And I articulated in the meeting yesterday, there were two goals here. One was make sure you could save the system so you could actually build something better, right? It becomes harder to resuscitate something the longer it's down. And the second was that every single person around the table had some version of those types of comments, which was, what does the new version look like? How do we do things differently? How do we talk about expansions structurally, not just from a capital perspective? It's $10,000 more to operate the system every new dock you add. I don't get the sense that they addressed that every single time they said, we're going to go to this place or that place. And so I think every single person around the table said there's going to need to be some fundamental changes. The city suggested that they were in for $100,000 for 3 years. I would not ask us to be in for more than one-time money until we have answers to a lot of the questions that you have, Chelsea, and that I've heard from other folks. And so my objective here is to make sure that the system can survive so that we can fix it. Because I think that if it dies, and if we're not able to, as a community, come together and keep it going for the next year, we never get to have the conversations where we evolve it.
I don't think it's our responsibility to fix it. That's the disconnect.
That's fair. Yeah, I think that's just where
You
we're
know what I
disagree.
mean? That's a disconnect. I think that we're a community partner, but I don't think that this is our responsibility to fix. I think that we have a share as a community partner in doing good and putting, like I said, that's extensive knowledge base to even download and share. Because clearly there's some challenges with how the mechanics and how they operate. We've been able to prove that we know how to do ridership in times of absolute peril. And so, to try to get the folks that we have, the experts that we have, if you wanted to use them as consultants, that's over $100,000 anyway in just business knowledge in a year's time. And so that's probably $250,000 that they're going to be able to get in downloaded transference of knowledge.
Fair.
I have a follow-up on that. So I think Oh, but Rod has been trying to get in. You want to go first?
No, I just want, before I leave, I was going to say what Pete just said, that to Chelsea's comments, we can't get to the conversation if we don't give the 100,000. And I look at this as not our responsibility, but to be a good neighbor and a good partner to this conversation and to what we're trying to do as a connected region. And so for that, I do support the one-time gift. So.
When will we be able to know more about their operational changes?
I would suggest that we need to be deeply involved in that conversation as a board. And over the next year, in partnership with staff, I don't know if it's Sarah's committee, the infrastructure and bike committee, should start meeting more regularly and take this up as a topic. If that's a joint conversation, like I don't know how we should do that structurally. I think that makes a lot of sense, but we need to be deeply involved in that because I think we have a lot of questions that we want to make sure we get answered, and we are going to have some perspective on this. Part of my goal in putting us at the table alongside the city from an investment level is I believe that folks are going to look at us and say, you have some responsibility here. We may all have different opinions on how true that is. I want us to be in a place to have the influence to say, here's what we think our responsibility is, and here's what we would need to see for us to be comfortable with that. And so that's an ongoing conversation that we need to be, all of us, not just one or two of us, but deeply involved in and having regular conversations about.
Okay.
I think I was more vocal last time because it felt like the presentation was more like a cry for help to save an organization that was dying. Where this, I think, feels more like an investment toward seeing what can be built for the future, with those questions and concerns not just coming from SORTA and everybody else thinking they already have figured it out. So one, I guess, stipulation that I would want to see is that our voice on this new board or whatever is formed matches the investment that we made, right? If we are contributing $100,000 of the $500,000 gap, then we should have a 20% stake on that board, right? So that would be something that I think is important. But other than that, I would be in support of the one-time $100,000. See what can be built for the future, but not going anything beyond that.
I have a question about where this. Oh, you're gonna.
I've had extensive conversation, and my answers weren't fully answered because they're not there. The data is not there. The composition of the board, I'm coming from management, and I'm saying if the board is not right, the staff is not right, the community is not invested. I don't know. And when we say community, I'm not talking about those with the pockets. I'm talking about those who use the red bikes and how they affect their various communities. When the red bike was formed, I was at the table listening to the conversation. Had nothing to do with the inner city. It had something to do with downtown. It had nothing to do with Bond Hill Avenue. It had nothing to do with them. So my stipulation would be, what we're doing now is that we're going to invest it just to hold them on another year. and I don't want to hold nobody on. It's like a bad breakup. And if the guy's not acting right today, he'll make him act right tomorrow. I've been there. So my concern, right? Well, it's not a concern. It's the issue for me that if we're not, Neil talked about the 20% investment. I see it bigger than that because people I've spoken with in group are not on the red bike. And the birds can fly on away. They just not there. So in my mind, I'm saying, okay, is this more recreation? And if I live a mile from the bus stop, am I going to take the bike to ride up to the bus stop and put it on the bus, to bring it back downtown? I don't know. Because I don't know how it operates from the moment you put your card in to the moment you get on it and use it. However, if we're willing to invest our expertise and our money to reinvent a new system that will benefit the community, because we're right now seen in the community as the transportation guru. We're it. I was happy yesterday because I saw Go Metro across the street. The gentleman across the street is using Go Metro, and I was really excited. I want to be excited about anything we invest our money in. Anything we invest our money in. I don't want people to say, I cannot get food or get to the doctor because we invested our money in a bike. And I'm not being facetious when I say that. I'm just saying, I'm going to be watching this process. I want to see who's involved with this process. I want to see the composition and the makeup of who's involved with this process. So at the end of the day, I feel okay. I know the voices were heard and things will change. And if we go in there trying to keep the same people that right now are sitting there, then I'm not for it. If you're going to change, you change.
Yeah, that's a good point. And one of the things that came out of the meeting was Interact for Health in particular has invested in the past to help sort of redesign nonprofit sustainability, like operating models and sustainability. And
Correct.
they committed to that they would be willing to do that as part of this
They have
process
to
over the
do
next year.
that.
And so Kate and her team, we're going to lean into that at Interact for Health, which I think is a huge asset to them.
Thank you, because that was going to be my real comment is about changing a nonprofit to be a nonprofit in good standing.
For sure. For sure.
When could our next opportunity be to have a deeper conversation on this? Like, what's the timeline we're looking at in terms of this potential investment?
Today.
I think we can decide that as an organization. I mean,
But there's some urgency.
There's some urgency.
because
There's some
it's
urgency.
spring and
Yeah,
they
yeah.
have to
So
open up.
That's kind of what I'm.
Yeah.
So I think I'm wondering, like, is it possible to have a committee meeting next week before the board meeting, or after it? No, we'd want it to be before.
Is your question in regards to whether or not you would have a deeper conversation before we would give direction to staff to invest, or
Potentially, I'm offering that to folks that feel
Yeah.
hesitant.
I mean, yeah.
There's a lot of I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. There was a lot of things in the presentation we reviewed last month that I think showed potential for a mutually beneficial relationship. And so I think maybe kind of going back over some of those points and kind of reevaluating may reassure folks.
When would they plan to open?
the goal is to be open by the beginning of. There's a major conference in mid-May. That's their goal would be to open by then. I think
Okay.
the action there's a challenge here. The action the board took over the last week to shut down the system actually meant that they went from a skeleton staff to today being the day that they laid off everyone but sort of one person on their staff, and so they will have to rehire and sort of reorient the system, and so that is a challenge. But their commitment in that room was we will reopen as quickly as possible under that stipulation in a sort of a slimmed down and wholly operational focused meeting. So I would guess it would be not April, but soon thereafter. Gotcha.
The last comment I would have is that I think that we are the bleep. That's what I think. I think about Metro. And I think that I'm hesitant to be in agreement that only if we have a monetary infusion do we get to have a voice. I do struggle with that because I think I feel like we're just very entrenched. I feel like the community supports us. I think that the work that we do and we've been able to prove that we are really successful. And I don't think that is for nothing. And I think that should be valued as well. And I think that we should have a seat at the table regardless, whether there's dollars or not. I don't look at it as if we have to buy our way into having those conversations because ultimately they're wanting to. I mean, we're the kind of the big dogs on campus, so they want to partner with us, and I think that's great.
Respond to that.
Yeah.
I just have a very practical question. So we obviously don't have a line item for Red Bike. And you've mentioned it would come out of marketing and sponsorships. I'm wondering if could you talk a little bit more about what this contribution would mean for our financials and how it would affect our marketing and sponsorship budget? Because we, just with the rebranding and everything, I know we have a lot on our plate to do. How do we afford to do this?
It would just be an adjustment in our budget. And of course, we're only through the first, not even through the first quarter of the year. We just would have to make some adjustments.
Would it change anything that we are planning to do this year as an organization?
It would not change anything we're planning to do this year. And it's one of the reasons I mentioned Pete's motion or his suggestion would be a 1 year.
Yes.
So it would not change anything that we have planned at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
So I have some questions. $500,000, but I don't think that's operating, right? That is not changes. And you just said 10,000 to change, add a stop or something like that. So let me finish the question. So you get pulled into this, and I can honestly get pretty excited about how we can connect it up with the transit system. But I think that costs money, right? Yeah. Changing all the stops, moving around, putting in the power if they're charged, putting in the concrete. I know how much work we've done for our stops. And I'm intrigued by the idea of this, but I also think like, wow, we need to think out the budget impact. I mean, I'll be honest. I'm thinking that there's one of these at every BRT stop, right? And I can see how that really could pull some ridership. People knowing that they could get off at any BRT stop and there would be a bike there for them to ride. It would expand the range of those stops and the influence. Yeah, I can get excited about that, but I think it actually costs more money than we're talking about right now. Maybe we need to explore some of those financials as too, because once we get pulled in and we start working on this, I think there's a gravity that forms. And, I think Gwen's point, all right, if we're going to realign this to this amazing transit system we're building, there might be a more substantial investment there. And then the one other question I had, I don't expect you to answer this, Pete. I was just having a conversation. But there was some debt in their financials, and I wasn't sure what that debt was that they were servicing. Is that their like capital investment? Okay, maybe I missed.
They have they have dollars on their books for future capital spend. That they've been awarded grants either through OKI or dollars from the city to do capital expenditures. That's sitting on their books. They haven't actually spent. But yeah, so maybe I misread it. That's what it was. That and the city's dollars are leveraged for the federal grant. The other you're talking about expansion was I think a really good one. It was really clear in the meeting yesterday that any conversation about expansion of the system has to be related to sustainability of the system, right? I think there's been an interest in growing the system to more neighborhoods and being in more places. That's a good thing fundamentally for it, but it's not a good thing if we're in a place like this where we can't operate a system that we have. And so I don't think there was a single person around the table who said we should talk about expansion until we know what sustainability looks like. And so I think those two things go hand in hand to be able to say, if you're going to do this, how do you operate it? And if we're going to grow by X number of stops along these corridors, you can't just think about what the capital outlay is. You have to think about what the operational outlay is. And so I think they heard the message loud and clear that this is the existing system we have today. And it might mean moving some stops around, not growing new ones. But until we know what sustainability looks like, we can't talk about growth, right? This is get lean, and then if you can grow, then grow. But, there was not a growth conversation. Excuse me.
I like new stuff. And our whole strategic plan, our whole Go Metro is all new. And we've really been proven we can do it. And I like new stuff. If we're the only, of all those groups you talked about, partners, we're the transit experts. And if we got a stronger voice in there, we can make this unique. And make it do what we believe could do that match our plan, our strategy. So it could be our thing for a year investment.
I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Did their board have a good turnout at the meeting today?
Yeah, they had 3 of their board members there, and they were I don't think there was any of this that they would have disagreed with from a conversation. They were, it was a positive conversation. I also think that they recognize that Red Bike 2.0 is going to look different from a governance structure, and I don't think there was any disagreement about that. I think that's.
Like 3 shows?
I don't know. To be fair, I do not know if it was the full board was invited. It was the treasurer, the treasurer, the board chair, and the emeritus board chair. So it was the leaders of their board were there. I'm not here to tell them whether they should have brought all 9 of their board members or whether they should have brought the leaders of their board. That's something I would defer to them.
I'm not saying that you should. This is a very serious, these are serious conversations. These are serious board question or board meetings that I would need for, the buy-in and for there to, and that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
The issue is structurally, the thing is just, there's some work to do.
Yeah.
So how do we put our arms around that? That's not gonna be solved today. That's not gonna be solved. I move that we have some further conversations. I don't feel like we should have to, scramble and scurry and make decisions with incomplete information. I don't do that on my personal finances. I don't do that over my company. And I'm not gonna do that over the stewardship of other dollars. Let's make sure we get all the information in one place and we can have a real full body discussion about it so we can really, do that with confidence and excitement. That's all.
I'm sure they're needing the money like as soon as possible.
Yeah,
but
they're-
have
they're-
they
they're-
given like a date, like kind of cut
Their
off
ability
wise?
to reopen is defined by being able to make sure they have these types of commitments over the next week and a half.
So
That allows them.
they're about 400.
400 of the 500.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, 400 would include 100 from
Yes,
us.
yes, assuming, yeah,
Be very clear. Yeah,
They're at
300, yeah.
I would. I respectfully disagree with you, Chelsea. I think that's fair, and I believe that we need to, as a board, be deeply involved in these conversations. But I do not want to see this in a place where we can't get this sustained, so that we can have a real, robust conversation about what the future version is. And I believe we have a role to be a part of that. So I think we just have a disagreement.
But Pete, I mean, along with Chelsea's point here, like, we're used to seeing really professional, data-driven information before the board.
Yeah.
So it's easy to be supportive. My thing keeps going off. I'm sorry. Easy to be supportive when you have all the data. In this case, it's so reactionary.
Yeah.
It doesn't do justice to the organizations that come forth with good metrics, good KPIs, and all that information that they say, can you help us support something that's already successful, and here's why you can be proud of this going forward, like Gwen just talked about. This is a different scenario than that. This is you have to do this, otherwise we're going to shut down. Doesn't make anybody feel good. So the sentiment that Chelsea's talking about, I couldn't agree with more. It puts everybody in a really vulnerable spot because it's $100,000 and to match the city beyond, and not $500,000, and that we could have a significant say in the future of it. Then I'm supportive, but nobody feels great about it.
I totally agree, and I told them. I don't remember who I said this to in the meeting. I've had enough conversations about this, but what we did as an organization, and Gwen, you were part of this, and Blake, you were part of this. We spent 3 years making the case for why we needed to invest in our transit system as we were a system that was dying, right? And if I were involved in this if I were involved on the opposite side of this conversation, I would have been doing that from a Red Bike perspective. That's not the way this played out, and I still believe that it's an asset worth saving so we can do that, but it's not how I would have gone about it. And so I wish that it was different. It's not, but I do think that this is a valuable asset to the community that we should be a part of saving. So.
Yes.
So I'm just going to play devil's advocate that I don't know that I necessarily support, but it's kind of playing in the back of my head, right? So let's say that we don't contribute any money and we kind of walk away from the conversation. As a group, and let's say they're able to raise that other $100,000, then we don't have a voice in this conversation at all, and they rebuild something completely separate that may be sustainable for them, but doesn't benefit us and doesn't benefit the community as a cohesive group. If we're supposed to be the transit group, right? That's something that I'm playing back and forth in the back of my head about how we think about this money. So just throwing that out there for the conversation. But a question, just a procedural question. What type of vote are we taking today, if any? Or are we just having the conversation? And
I believe, and maybe Daryl or Andy or Kim can tell me, I believe it would just be to give them direction from a market. It's not a allocation, it's direction to negotiate a marketing or sponsorship package at that level.
Got it.
Is that a fair?
I think at 100,000.
At 100,000.
Be a board
Yeah.
action.
Yeah.
Is
And
that the
approval.
motion to go before the
Go,
board?
go before the full board, yeah,
Okay.
next week. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll second it to go before the board.
Yeah.
So I think we could decide whether we want to have an action item this
For the
month
board.
or next month. Next month would make it harder for
Yeah.
Red Bike,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I honestly agree with everything that's been said here. I think everybody's bringing up the right points. So we have to decide whether we want to take action.
We have the opportunity to vote it
Correct me if
down
I'm wrong.
next week.
What?
We can still vote it down next week, so. There's- Putting it on the agenda is not the end of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm happy to make a motion to direct the board to invest $100,000 in a marketing or sponsorship partnership with Red Bike. With
Do
this,
you want to refine that? Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
You were making a
I was
motion
gonna,
and interrupted
I was
you.
gonna say with the stipulation that Metro would be engaged in the conversations over the next year about sustainability and future organization. That a-
Or do we make it more strong that we want a seat on the board? Can we do that?
I'm fine with that. I think the reason I hesitate there is because there are operating models here where there's nonprofit operations in the future. There are operating models like in some places where the city owns the assets and they contract it out. And so the only reason I would say that's not a direct expectation is that you might find over the next 6 months that the operating model we have is not the one we should have going forward. And I don't want to tie our hands. I think that there's collective sense here that we agree with, assuming there's a nonprofit model, that we would have some board representation. But I don't know that that's the outcome 6 or 8 months from now. Does that make sense?
That's interesting. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I have questions, but I think we should consider that with the full board, that whole question about board seat situation.
Yeah.
So Brianna, did you second?
All right, so we have a motion and it's been seconded. So from there, this is new for me on this adding something. Do we
Just a voice vote.
all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so it's moved on to first
I'm
full.
going to abstain. I want to abstain for the record. My organization has a financial relationship with
Okay.
Red Bike, so I'd like
Okay.
to.
All right.
Thank you all. I promise to not try to spring things on new business generally. So
Don't believe him.
And our next meeting, our planning out.
Well, I'm most excited that the planning and ops meeting is going to be shorter than finance.
Hey,
I'm sitting here smiling through the whole.
Grace on, yeah, I did it to you.
Not my fault. All right, any other new
Fast
business? Hearing none, Finance Committee is adjourned. Now,
Wow, let's move right into planning and ops. And I did think that we would have a short planning and ops meeting. I thought Pete was going to bring that up in our meeting, but this is a great opportunity. Let's not blow it.
You want to do it again? You bring it up
I've
again.
actually got some new business.
You're not recognized. Okay, so
Ignored.
We've already done the pledge, so let's move right into. Oh well, we've got the minutes. I trust you've all been able to review them. I make a motion to approve the minutes. Properly moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? All right. So minutes pass. We've got good news from John.
All right, good morning. Thank you. Let's start with January Silver Award recipients from Adrian, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Starting with the Queensgate Operator of the Month, DeWitt Teferi. Is being recognized for his professionalism and dependability. 0 absences in January, and 97% OTP, and always recognizing the needs of his customers, so congratulations. Next, we have Access Driver Leah Wolfer. Leah took and worked above and beyond expectations as she was driving in January on an icy day with pretty bad road conditions. She could not get up a hill to actually get her passenger to the door, so she actually got out of the bus and walked with the customer up the hill to get him to his home safely. So congratulations to Leah. And then next we have Tom Ward, Queensgate maintenance employee, who's being recognized and commended for his attitude and dependability, and the work he recently did on a 1600 bus. That was pretty difficult task per his supervisor, and was greatly appreciated. He was able to resolve the issue. Next we have Bond Hill Maintenance, Adam Odom. He's been with us about 13 years, again being recognized for his great attitude. And at the start of his shift, or before the start of one of his shifts in the middle of rain, there was an operator in the parking lot who had a flat tire, so he stood out there with the operator and helped him change the tire in the parking lot. The operator offered to pay him, but of course he denied, so that's just a little bit more about going above and beyond to help your colleagues. And then we have Annabella DeLuca. Annabella's a new supervisor. She's been with us about 6 months. And she's a body shop supervisor, and she was being recognized for some work she did when her peer supervisor was off, and so she had to work alone as a supervisor for about 4 weeks, just keeping the employees working, and is always willing to work and help others in need. And then finally, we have our own Natalie Cruisley, Employee of the Month. So Natalie, as we well know, is a team player above all team players. She stepped up recently to help with the ARM board meetings and has done an excellent job, as we well know. Being recognized also for her professionalism, and she continues to volunteer and lead the effort for our adopted class who were here recently with us last week. Students, and so her love for children or pride of Metro is always very prevalent. So congratulations to all, and congratulations, Natalie.
Well done all. Thank you, Adrian. We've got some exciting grant news for the board. We've recently been awarded nearly $4 million from Ohio EPA under the DIRG program. These funds will replace 4 retiring diesel-powered buses with hybrids. So we will apply these funds towards part of the 2024 series and 25 series buses as we get closer towards low-emission and zero-emission fleet.
I would like to see you promote that even more. I mean, because we continue to get, people are saying, I'm tired of the emissions from the buses, and I'm telling them we're taking them offline. So try to push that a little bit more.
We've got big plans for promoting this, no doubt, no doubt. Also in the grant arena, we received $1 million in federal funding from ODOT. We'll put this towards our bus stop enhancement project. This now brings us to a total of grants and local match to well over $6 million towards the program as we seek to roll out this new amenity across our network of 4,000 bus stops. A lot more progress will happen with this program this year. This might top that. Our newest access buses have arrived. They are the first new additions to the fleet since 2019. This is an incredibly challenging production area in terms of the chassis for this type of vehicle. We can't count the buses. 10 have arrived, though only 8 are pictured. Trust me, there are 10 on property. More to come this week. And these are the first buses in the fleet with the new design. So if you're here next week for the board meeting, we'll bring one down to show it off. Please check it out, and including note the difference as we move towards a low floor vehicle. So a ramp instead of the lift that has safety improvements. The lifts can fail from time to time. So we're very excited about the low floor feature.
I can confirm from experience, lifts break down a lot more than ramps.
All right.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yep. Very excited about that feature.
You like breaking down lists.
Right. Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I need it too, my legs are
All right. Earlier this month, we also completed a series of town hall meetings with the executive team presenting across all shifts at all facilities, updates to our strategic plan, and also bringing to employees the results of some items that we put in place thanks to employee town hall and other feedback. We thank the employees for their energy and engagement, no doubt, but I'd also like to take a minute to recognize Brandy's communications team. They were with us all week, setting up as early as 3 in-the-morning, staying well past 8 o'clock on some nights. All hands were on deck. It could not happen. Yes, without Brandy. Yeah. Can't wait to do it again, right? Yeah. All right, and that's a nice segue into hearing about our latest employee satisfaction survey results. Adrian, please.
Yes, we're really excited. We just had another employee engagement survey in September of last year. We had one in 22 as well. In 22, we had about a 96.5% employee satisfaction survey where employees are stating that they were happy for the work they do at Metro. And this year we had 95.5%. So we're maintaining that level of excitability. We're more excited that we had a greater percentage of our employees take the survey this year. In 22, we had about 50%, a little over 50% of the employees take the survey. And this year, we had over 70% of the employees take the survey. And even with that, we were able to maintain the 95.5%. Of employees who are excited about the work they do at Metro. And obviously, there's lots more information we can provide at a later date, but we're real excited about where we're headed and the results we're seeing from our employees. Additionally, we had the Diversity Council, who took some time during Women's History Month to go and serve lunch at the Anna Louise and to the economically disadvantaged population of women there. And so they were there and had a great time fellowshipping with those women, and just playing a part in the community is what they want to continue to do. So congratulations to the Diversity Council.
Thank you, Adrian. Also, as previously mentioned, we recently hosted Adopt-A-Class visits, field trips from 7 classrooms. We lead 7 classrooms across 3 different schools. Students rode the buses, toured our facilities, came downtown, toured the executive offices and the administrative offices down here. Fantastic engagements, a great program led by so many, certainly Natalie included. And again, we'd sponsor 7 classes, so thank you to all team leads there. And we're not done, a 3rd tour scheduled for March 20th. Next, we'd like to hear from Brandy about Transit Employee Appreciation Week. One day is not enough, and some exciting promotion events coming up.
Good morning. Yesterday was National Transit Employee Appreciation Day. And as John said, we think our folks are so great. We want to celebrate them all week long. So we have been in all of our facilities during each shift, and we have brought food. So in the mornings, we have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and giveaways, and music, and festivity. And all of our staff have visited each of the garages to thank and celebrate all of our workforce for what they do every day in service to our community. And we were so grateful yesterday to have Councilwoman Mika Owens join us in the morning to thank our drivers and our maintenance workers. And she brought us special treats, and her team were just great to have to be a part of that celebration. Today is election day for primaries, and Metro service is free for our community to ride. So that is on our fixed route, our Access Paratransit, and our Metro Now service. We want to make sure that we are removing transportation as a barrier for our community. And so please do help us spread the word and encourage anyone who may need our services today to use those free of charge. And speaking of free of charge, later this month on March 28th is opening day. And we think it's a great opportunity to invite our community to come down and enjoy the festivities, but to use Metro. What better opportunity to leave your car parked at home, avoid the traffic and the congestions and the expensive parking, and just leave the driving to Metro, and you can enjoy all the festivities responsibly and fun. And our service is so amazing now with extended hours, more frequency. We think this is just the perfect opportunity to introduce many to our new service. So Metro will also be in the parade this year. So if you are interested in walking with us, please do let me know, and we will get you the details for our staging. But either way, please do look for our team walking in the parade. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Thank you, Brandy.
Can I just
Yeah, of course.
Tomorrow, 11:30 is Bond Hill.
Yes, we will be at Bond Hill starting at 6 a.m., but we are serving lunch at 11:30.
All right, that's where I want to be. Okay.
All right.
I want to be sure.
Ain't gonna be there at 6.
Yeah, let the minute show Gwen will be there at 6. Make sure that I'll see you there.
It's there at 6.
Please also come out to the Golden Bus Awards event. Our 3rd annual Employee of the Year event and banquet is this Thursday, March 21st at Music Hall. Quite a celebration as we crown our Employees of the Year for 2023. And then also we invite anyone nominated for the Silver Employee of the Month Awards will be in attendance as well. We truly recognize the best of the best here at Metro. So again, please come on out Thursday, March 21st. And no better way to end the March presentation in Women's History Month than looking back to our first woman operator, Myra Hofstetter, hired in 1974. She was the first. Fun fact, about 47% of operators today are women, 47%. So think about the trailblazers, the career advancers that have come through Metro in all ranks of the organization that continues today. The organization and the community are certainly better for it, without doubt. With that, Mr. Chair, that's the news. What's that?
I think she was J.K. Rowling's inspiration.
Maybe.
All right.
Maybe.
John's like, I don't understand the reference. I'm just gonna smile.
It landed.
You're like,
Quit it.
smile or not, John. Smile and
Keep
not.
going. Keep going.
My kids read those books. I'm sure they.
Keep going.
There you go. That's it.
It's too much coffee.
All right, let's move right into ridership. Amazing good news. Thank you. Ooh, heat maps. Mark,
Hey.
take it away.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Mark Simon. I'll be guiding you through the February ridership report. All right. So for the month of February, our total ridership was 1,040,000, with local service carrying 1,012,000 of that, and express carrying 27,250 passengers. This was slightly unfavorable to budget by 2.8% for all fixed route and 3.3% for local. However, express service ridership was 15.6% favorable to budget. Next slide, please. There we go. Ridership continues its general trend up as we enter the warmer months, the typical winter dip reversing. Average weekday ridership was 42,416 passengers, which is unfavorable to budget by 6.8%. Average Saturday ridership was 20,530, unfavorable to budget by 10%, while average Sunday ridership was 16,778, which was favorable to budget by 22%. Local service achieved a productivity of 17.7 passengers per hour and a cost recovery of 11.8%, both favorable to our KPIs. And express service achieved a productivity of 8 passengers per trip, an increase from previous months, and a cost recovery of 21.3%, which is favorable to our KPI.
Mark, is there a theory on express service, or is it 1 month and let's see if it's a trend? What do we? Is it the new route come into effect?
There's 2 things. So one is our new Route 22, which is east to west in the morning, west to east in the morning, east to west in the afternoon. That has performed well above expectations. Actually, our most productive express route 3 months in. The other is I think there's been a noticeable uptick in folks working in person downtown, and that is reflected in the passenger loads on express trips. All right, next slide, please. On-time performance continued to rise, ticked up to 78.8% for all service in February. In February, there were 759 missed trips with 98.8% of scheduled service delivered. That does hit our monthly KPI for the month of February of serving 98.8% of our trips, working towards the year-end goal of 99.6%. And as a reminder, a missed trip does not necessarily mean that the bus did not leave the garage. There are many reasons a trip could be missed. For example, if a trip is more than 15 minutes late on its route for any reason, when it hits a time point, that trip is classified as missed. Next slide, please. And this shows the day-by-day missed trips. Next slide, please. And the average number of missed trips by day of week. Friday does continue to be the highest day. Metro Now. Metro Now continues to climb with 5,209 riders in February between the two zones, with an on-time performance pickup rate of 98.9%, which we classify as the vehicle arriving at the pickup location within 5 minutes of the estimate given by the app. Go. Weekday average ridership on Metro Now was about 197. Saturday average ridership was about 153, and Sunday average ridership was 116, all increases from all previous months. The board requested that we put back the slides showing the destinations in the two zones. So here you see the Springdale Forest Park zone. The top location continues to be the Woodlawn Kroger, followed by the Meadows Retirement Village, Target, Bob Evans. I think there's one or two people who just like work there every day, and or somebody just like really likes Bob Evans and just going there like every day. I like Bob Evans.
Because you've got the Meadows
Yeah.
Retirement
I was
Village
just
and
going
Bob
to say,
Evans.
Everything.
I saw a direct correlation there.
All
Yeah.
right, Glenda, we're going to breakfast. Absolutely.
On the way home, we're going grocery shopping.
Right? And then on the
Yeah, something going on there.
next slide, we'll see the Northgate zones. So for Northgate, actually 3 of the top destinations are just the Krogers that are in the zone. Mount Healthy High School is also a top destination, as well as the Clippard YMCA in Coleraine. Next slide, please. Mhm.
These are, this is really meaningful. Like, I really, like, not to be cheesy, but like touched by seeing that information. You know, like we're helping people access food, and like that's huge. And what that means in the life of people and families, like I'm so proud that we're a part of that. It's great.
We don't get this data for a fixed route system where you don't know.
Yeah.
So it's-
So are there, and I'm assuming that there's got to be some larger health facilities in these pockets? Are there?
I do not believe there's like a major medical center, but there are offices. So there are like, dental clinics, smaller practices, and those do show up.
Are they showing up?
Yeah, and these are, as a reminder, destinations. It doesn't include the origin, so it's really double the number if you assume a return trip.
And when it comes to medical facilities, what we see in terms of ridership is that folks don't necessarily go to the doctor 5 days a week, right? So it might be important access, but you go to work every day or you go to the grocery store once a week.
Yeah.
So you don't really, it's a super important connection, but sometimes I'm not surprised that you wouldn't see a medical office on the heat map.
And
But that was
not to belabor Sarah's point, but I think this is super important. We're helping people access food, school, and exercise, right? Like, what are the main things that we're all about, right? I think this, more than any other thing that I've seen in the couple months I've been here, this is showing the mission, I think, more than anything else. Well done, Mark.
I think access to care was another factor in determining the zones that we started out with, which is great. And I have that question too. I long thought from before it started that we were going to see Kroger's, and I'm excited about that because of exactly what Sarah just said. Right? So, excellent stuff.
And I'm also wondering, so for Mount Healthy, I'm assuming that those times are predominantly in the morning and perhaps afternoon when school's beginning and ending, or are we seeing other things for
That's my assumption. There's also, after school activities and different things that happen at the school on weekends. I can dig into that for you. My assumption is that it is primarily going to be weekday, school times. But
This is good. Thank you so much.
right. Next slide, please. Actually, does Mount Healthy provide busing for high school? Okay.
Yeah, we're all struggling. That's why.
Right. Okay. Yeah, good to know. Okay.
We're gonna beat those numbers.
Oh, yeah. On to access.
Challenge accepted.
How's access doing?
On to access. So access ridership for the month of February was 14,883, favorable to budget by 0.7%. Weekday ridership was 13,222. Saturdays was 610, and Sunday's ridership was 1,051. And as a reminder, those are total numbers for all the day types combined, not daily averages. Next slide, please. And here's the past 4 years, looking month by month for access. It generally follows the same trend line as fixed route, which you can see if you compare them. Next slide, please. Access OTP dips slightly to 87% in February. Next slide. Access productivity was 2.09 passengers per hour compared to the KPI of 2.2. And the cost per passenger dipped to $57.82 compared to the KPI of $55.
Hey, Mark.
Mhm.
Sorry. Do we have I know 87% is pretty high, but do we have a reason that it dipped that we know of?
Yeah, we had some really bad single days. So we had a couple really bad Saturdays, even some Fridays that really otherwise tarnished a month that could have been north of 90%. So we're looking at some staffing strategies to address that. But yeah, we had some bad weekends in the month of February.
Okay, thanks.
Right. So the final few slides in this are the route by route level KPIs for on-time performance, productivity, cost per passengers. We typically do not go over these in the meetings. If you have any questions, you may certainly ask. Otherwise, that information is available in your packet. Right.
Thank you, Mark.
Yep.
Any questions? All right. So 2 more big items here. So we're threatening my beating finance time here. So strategic plan update, Khaled.
Good morning. Just a quick note that we're in the process of updating our strategic plan, covering different categories such as culture of the organization, projects that will be implemented over the next few years, and then the KPIs and moving forward with the service. And definitely we want to engage the board in that. So expect we'll be setting up some meetings would love to hear from all of you, depending on your schedules, but we'll work with the board to engage you in that process, and especially in the culture piece. I'll be happy to take any questions if you have any, but that was just an FYI.
Wow, I thought it was going to be a long presentation.
No,
I see
no,
strategic plan.
That's just a heads up.
And I'm like,
just a heads up.
Text here.
I want to make this meeting as short as possible.
Sonia said she was going to ask lots of questions.
No.
Any questions? No. Well,
Thank
I
you.
look forward to conversations. I think everybody here
Sure.
would like to be involved with that. So,
Thank you.
very much, Helen. And Andy, yes. Home 52 transportation. This is really interesting. So please take us through this.
Sure. I guess maybe I'll start with Mr. Driehaus. So this was an issue that was brought up in the Planning and Ops Committee previously, and I don't know, Dan, if you want to kind of give a little bit of context for why we're having the conversation today.
Yeah. So Pete, thanks for coming back in the room. This was on the agenda. I'm glad there was a theme that developed here with regard to transportation. Like I think Gwen hit the nail on the head. There's some pride that goes into this. I was at the College Hill Kroger on Sunday, and some of the metro services were there, and they were interacting with the population going in and out of Kroger. And I don't know, I just thought it was pretty pretty neat experience to witness it, right? It's happened before, but just being on the board now, you're like, oh, I can see where this really plays out in real life. So it's fun to see it firsthand. Another reason to be proud is in our county, we are strong supporters of our seniors and keeping seniors in their homes. So we pass senior services levies on a regular basis. We have very strong support for that. The demand for transportation services and those dollars is higher than ever. And so it's the most vulnerable population. This is folks that the providers are sometimes Meals on Wheels. Oftentimes they are smaller providers. A bunch of them are MBE providers, which is a nice aspect of this. And we as a community, through Council on Aging, support the funding through transportation coordination. And the coordinating of those services is quite a bit different than what we do at SORTA, because these are through-the-door services. Some of these are wellness checks, not just dropping off a person or a box at the door, but actually if somebody is at home alone, oftentimes the provider is the only person they might see that week for these nonprofit services. So that's just a subject to think about. I know on paratransit, if Craig were here, he would talk about the continuous improvement that we're striving for at SORTA. And paratransit is something that falls under our umbrella of services. The through-the-door services is a step beyond that, right? It is a significantly vulnerable population that might otherwise be in nursing homes, but in this case, they're staying in their homes, which is good for our county and our people. So the services provided finish the continuum of care. There's quick turnaround, often to medical providers, so doctors, dentists, things of that nature. Sometimes food, so Kroger's is relevant, but really it's the medical providers that really see the uptick in population that Meals on Wheels and that transports. So I was interested in the subject, and Council on Aging asked if we would be engaged with them on a conversation about our involvement with them directly. So I asked Andy, earlier the staff, and Andy was the person who ran point on this, to investigate a little bit more Home 52 and our involvement with them. Thanks.
Thank you. So the agenda here today is kind of give you an explanation overall of the services that are provided under the Home 52 Transportation Program, and then also talk a little bit about some of the challenges or the forecasting as we look toward the future. If we turn to the next slide, just so you can understand organizationally and structurally, where does this program sit? If we go to the highest level here of organization, it's the Council on Aging. So the Council on Aging is a nonprofit that operates in Southwest Ohio. You can see their mission bolded there. They're also a state designated area agency on aging. So, we're used to dealing with OKI on the transportation side, where they're kind of the clearinghouse for federal transportation funds. Council on Aging does similar work when it comes to aging and social services. They have their clearinghouse for some state and federal funding to make sure that services are aligned, so on and so forth. And you can see they operate in many southwestern Ohio counties. Next slide shows you that Home 52 is actually a subsidiary of Council on Aging. Okay, so they are a program within the Council on Aging. They're basically the Council on Aging's innovation hub, right? So outside of the standard services that are provided through the Senior Services Levy, they use this hub to try to solve more difficult problems or innovative programs to the community. They have 3 programs that they operate under the Home 52 umbrella. That is, one is called Positive Choices, one is called Add and Aid, and then the third is Home 52 Transportation, which we'll talk about. So these first 2 slides are just structurally to show you where this program sits structurally and administratively within our community. Good? Okay, now let's talk about the program itself. Next slide shows you what Home 52 Transportation does. This is the continuum. Again, this is their information. I'm kind of providing this as a staff to provide the nuts and bolts. We have members of Council on Aging here today if you have specific questions. This is the continuum that we typically see in the community, right? folks may own or drive a vehicle. They may use public transportation. We have a requirement under ADA to provide paratransit, and that's our access service. That's a federally required ADA transportation that operates within 3/4 of a mile of all of our fixed routes. And then above and beyond that, for those that need even more assistance, is this Home 52 program. And you can see it's for folks that have even more limited ability to use the transportation network. And we'll walk into that on page 6. Home 52 provides door-through-door service. As Dan mentioned, some folks need assistance gathering their belongings or medications or equipment in order to get onto a vehicle and to get through the door to the doctor's office or to a critical appointment. That's a higher level of I guess, a higher level of support than we provide and is required on the access side. You can see medical, dental, vision, same-day sick appointments, pharmacy, so on and so forth. The provider, the transportation provider, actually can provide communication between the passenger and their destination, doctor's office, so on and so forth. That operates 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, and you can see a quote there in terms of the benefits that are provided under the program. The next slide kind of shows you Council on Aging and Home 52 have gotten this thing figured out to a certain extent, right? It's a solid system with solid rider feedback. The coordination works for the person being transported, and also their destination seems to work well. And you can see some of the health responses there with respect to the assistance. The next slide shows some of the nuts and bolts of the program. Eligibility for this particular program, even though Council on Aging has a broader umbrella, this particular program is operating in Hamilton County. The individuals to be eligible need to have a specialized need for transportation that aligns with the type of service being provided. This is for adults. And currently, most passengers don't pay a fare. It's covered by the Home 52 funding. And then there are others that self-pay. If they don't qualify under one of the other Council on Aging or Senior Services programs, some seniors do have the ability to self-pay for this transportation. The way it's provided,
Andy,
yes, sir.
Andy, on that, just trying to understand it, the self-pay, is that at the rate of the trip, or is that subsidized in some way?
It's at the cost of the trip.
Thanks.
Great. The answer was that it's at the cost of the trip is the self-pay. Okay. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Judy and Dan are both here from Council on Aging and can help us answer technical questions as well. Suzanne, sorry. Suzanne, thank you.
Will you guys stand up so our board can see exactly who you are? You guys may remember Suzanne.
Can I ask a question? When you say cost of the trip, what is included in that cost of the trip? And they're told ahead of time how much it would be?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
When someone calls in, we will tell them what the trip costs. The costs vary, so it's a little different. It's not a fair
Jan,
system.
do you mind coming to the microphone, Jan? And Suzanne?
That microphone?
Yes, please.
So when they call in, we will find out where they're going, when they need to be picked up. We have a transportation management system called Novus Med. It's a TripSpark product. Most of you in the transportation business know those companies. So we will figure out what car, the right car, vehicle, whether they're ambulatory, non-ambulatory, what kind of needs the vehicle needs to have, which one's closest, and then which one's cheapest. And that's the one that we will send for the person and give them the rate. All of our providers are contracted with us, and they give us a rate that's within some parameters. So we say your rate can't be less than this or more than this. And then the system determines which one is cheapest, right? There's some competitive, there's a competitive edge with your trip rates. Most of our providers are small business entities, right? So some are owner operators, they have one car. That's what they do. Others have 2, 3, 4 cars. I think our largest provider that's a small business entity has 6 cars. And they started out with 1 or 2, and they've grown with us over the 3-year period. Another provider is Meals on Wheels, who does our home delivered meals, but they also work with us in our transportation space. And then Easter Seals Redwood, who work with the developmentally disabled population and, already have that space. And they also contract with us to do transportation.
Great. So,
Am
thank
I
you.
good?
Yep. Thank you. Next slide again shows that, as was mentioned by Judy, providers provide the trips through this local network, as was mentioned before, right? So it's not Home 52 or Council on Aging. It's not their vehicles and their employees. It's provided through this network of subcontracted providers. The funding for this program comes from Hamilton County Senior Services Levy, some federal grants, and also some hospital foundation dollars. But the vast majority, as I understand it, is through Hamilton County Senior Services Levy. Numbers, 2023, about 48,000 trips from about 1,300 unduplicated riders. The cost to provide that service in 2023 was about $3.4 million. This next slide why are we having this conversation, right? What is the context here? As mentioned before, this program, the primary funding source is from senior levy funds. Hamilton County's senior population is growing at a faster rate than the senior levy funds, right? We have an aging population. So therefore, there's a squeeze when it comes to senior services within the region. So the funds that are being used for this transportation program could otherwise be used for core senior services. So this is the question, right? The question that's been presented to us as staff and that Dan is bringing to the board is, should this program be supported with public transit dollars? That's a policy issue, right? It's a policy issue for this board. And from a technical perspective, we wanted to kind of provide you as much as we could learn from our view. The next slide shows you some things that we learned. And this is very similar to the conversation that we had last month, right? There are opportunities to continue the spectrum of services provided by Metro. There are lots of transportation needs in the region. We've done a very good job at meeting many of those needs, but others do remain. There's some considerations for Metro. These trips, when you compare it to our access service, are more expensive, right? They're more hands-on. And when we look at the rate and the number of trips provided, they are more expensive than our access services. It is above and beyond the federally required ADA. There would need to be regulatory review if we were to put any dollars toward this, right? Again, like anything, if we were to provide service through a third-party provider, you have federal rules and drug and alcohol and all those kinds of things that would need to be considered or navigated at least, right? And then the same conversation that we had last month with respect to Red Bike is reinnovating Metro Issue 7. This was not part of the original plan, right? We're 2.5 through 5 phases of that plan. We have more services yet to be rolled out. That is the context in which we're working for all of the decisions that we're making right now. Just wanted to be clear about that. But really, slide 12 just shows you, again, this is a policy issue. This is an issue that has been brought to us as a provider in the region and providing the space for you all to have this conversation. Again, we have folks here that can help answer questions. From a technical perspective, we can help. But this is really looking for direction from the board at this point in time. Thank you.
So what questions do you have?
I have one kind of big question. Do we have numbers for any of this? Like how much would be requested from us? Like at what rate is it growing faster than the levy funds? Exactly how much more would it, or how much does it cost to do these types of routes per ride versus what we provide right now? Those types of number type questions are what I would want to see.
Suzanne, are you able to come to the microphone to speak to that?
And if I'm right, you were once a member of this board, right?
I was. Yes, I was.
Welcome back.
Former board chair also, so thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you. So I guess just a general background, in terms of kind of why the request. We are currently, when we've gone through the tax levy review committee process, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but Hamilton County has a tax levy review committee process, and the issue of transportation and why is this in senior services levy was raised by that group. So that led us to the county, and then ultimately, I think, conversations with Dan to talk about, is there an opportunity for transportation funds to assist in what we are currently providing. And so what has happened with the pandemic is that we have seen a tremendous growth in individuals coming onto our programs. They no longer want to go to institutional care. They never really did to begin with, but post-pandemic and all the issues with people not being able to get to their loved ones in nursing homes has yielded high growth on our program. More than we were anticipating. That, coupled with inflation on meals, we've seen like 34% increase in meal costs and other costs, has yielded us to be in a position right now where we have had to close enrollment to anyone that is not coming out of a hospital. So if you are a member of the community and need our services, we can't provide them right now. We're only accepting people coming out of a hospital environment.
So what do those numbers look like? A wait list?
It's not a wait list, Dan, at this point. We've decided not to do that. We've just said, unless you are in a hospital, we can't help you. So there's a lot of issues once you start a waiting list, that we've changed our eligibility criteria temporarily to avoid having a waiting list. But it's made it very tough to get into the program. I had a call like last week, like, I need dialysis trips. Can you do it? Can I get on the program? Like, you cannot, which is unfortunate. And a lot of the trips that, you saw on the charts here are to dialysis appointments. So, we had on the slide what our total funding is, and that's all funds. I think from the levy in Hamilton County, it's probably like $2.8 million that we are spending on this service. It is expensive. These are people who are, if they are able to use any of those other channels, they're required to. So if they're able to get on, Metro, they have to do that. We won't provide transportation. If they are able to utilize Access, they have to utilize Access. It's only for those individuals who are so frail or cognitively impaired that cannot, they need that extra from the door through to the doctor's office service. So that's where we are, financially. I don't know, we've set a special request. I think if we're up to the tax levy review committee, they'd say these are public transportation services. Can you do it all? But, any participation or partnership with us would be appreciated, because it's just going to allow us to serve more individuals in the community with other basic services like meals and other things.
Ms. Suzanne,
Yes.
once they've been released from the hospital, how long are they part of the program?
Okay, so we have two programs. We have a fast track home program where we assist people with services that are coming straight out of the hospital. Sometimes their acuity level is such that it improves after a short stay. 40% of the individuals are going full-time onto our regular program, which is the elderly services programs. And once they're on that program, their length of stay, as we call it, is usually about 2 to 2.5 years. And they only disenroll due to typically death or move to a nursing home.
Will adding more subcontractors help in being able to provide more services for the seniors?
I think we have the current needs met with our subcontractor. We're always looking to bring on, new organizations and more, make sure everything's competitive. But it's really just the funding challenge for us.
So you're saying administratively, not in terms of expanding the subcontractors? You don't need more vehicles or?
I don't think at this point, Judy, do we? We did at one point, and we've really been working on growing our small and minority business program with providers like Judy mentioned. Maybe they start out with 1 or 2 cars, and they've grown to, 6, and it's a
So the number of providers we have today appears to be sufficient. We have 5 providers in the pipeline getting pre-certified because we're always looking for those niche hours, that 5 a.m. dialysis visit, right? As more and more people end up needing dialysis and they can get that service, I don't know why, but it always seems to be a 5 a.m. appointment, right? So to have a provider that's willing to be out and on the road at 5, you know, their day's pretty much over by 1. Their 8 hours are up. So it's us looking to say, charting and analyzing where we need cars to serve this group of people, and then bringing providers on that can fill those hours.
So, but this is, so right now you have enough providers for this limited capacity, but if you were to receive more funding and expand the population that you're serving, you would need more providers, right?
If they were eligible for this service. So in 2023, we served just around 8,000 older adults in the levy program. Only 1,300 were assessed to be eligible for this kind of transportation. Anyone else who had transportation needs needed to use public transportation, access, had family and friends, you know, had a different network. So this isn't, everybody who gets on uses this. And as people age and their conditions change, their abilities change. So I might have somebody that's getting services today that's using the Metro, and in 6 months from now, they've had an accident. They've been in the hospital for 3 weeks. They're now coming home, and they need this level of service.
That was kind of my next question was, in terms of eligibility, is there a level of folks who may be eligible for certain trips, but not across like everything they do? So some trips they can take with other services, but they're eligible for your services once a month to this specific location that's potentially more difficult to travel to and from?
So not necessarily.
Okay.
If anyone has private insurance, and most individuals have Medicare, if you're 65 or older, then we help them navigate their private insurance, and we say, let's take a look to see if you're in a D-SNP program that might offer some additional services. Oh, your plan allows 16 trips a year. Let's talk to your health insurance plan and tell them what your mobility needs are to see if they can meet those. And if they can, we'll use those trips first, right? So we're always trying to access services where they need, where other than us first, because we're the levy dollars, right? Trying to be the last pair of resort. If someone can take some other kind of transportation, they can't get us.
Right.
So it's not really about where they're going necessarily, it's their mobility. What's holding them back from being able to ride with a neighbor, take the bus, you know, whatever that might be. And our care managers do these health assessments. So, you know, this mobility piece is part of that assessment, because we have a lot of people that need transportation services, and we help hook them up in the community. Do you know about Metro? Do you know how to do that? Let's get you connected. Or you can't take the Metro today. Your needs are greater than what Access can accommodate. Now we're doing that assessment, and we're able to verify that, and that's why they're getting transportation through the senior service levy.
Can you speak to the eligibility criteria?
So there is, the eligibility criteria isn't necessarily about income, because when you hear about eligibility, typically that's the first thing people think, oh, this is an income program. It's primarily about deficits in your daily living skills, right? So we're doing an assessment. Suzanne said that our average age is about 83. Right, so at 83, we're doing an assessment in your home to see what can and can't you do, and of those deficits in daily activities, what services can we provide to help keep you at home safely, independently, for as long as possible? Because the next step is living somewhere else, right? It costs a lot more to be in a nursing home than it does to live at home.
There is a financial eligibility to be on the levy, though. So roughly 80% of the individuals served by the levy are below 200% of poverty. There is a sliding fee scale. So when Judy referenced, we do an assessment. We do not only an assessment to see what level of care they are, but we do a financial assessment and make a determination of whether they have the capability to pay. And if they do, there's a sliding fee scale and they pay for a portion of their services. Some people may be 100% self-pay on our program just to get our vetted network of service providers, but that's rare. It's mostly very low to moderate income.
And there is an age requirement.
Yes,
correct?
60 for Hamilton County.
Just clarifying that, because I think some of the things say person with a disability, but that's specifically person with a disability who's also above a certain age.
That's correct, 60. That's right.
Just wanted to have that clarified.
So
Thank you.
Yes.
So that I'm understanding, the levy dollars are the ones that fund those 1,300 trips.
Yes, that's
correct.
Mhm.
Solely. What is that amount of that? I think it was 3.4 or
Yeah.
2.6 million. What was that? That's in total the amount that's going
in
towards
total,
those
because we also
1,300.
get some OKI money.
Okay.
You know, we apply for grants. We do what we can to bring dollars in to offset that.
Is that slide 9?
Please.
Slide 9.
Slide 9. I'm asking them to move
Yeah.
back. Put it up on the screen for us all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that's the total. I think the levy's about 2.9, about $500,000 less.
And Suzanne and Judy, could you tell us what the spend was in 22 and 21?
I didn't bring that.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can provide that for you.
I think it was sub 2 at one point. I think it was 1.8 not too many years back. So it's grown dramatically in the past couple of years.
So the 1,300 riders resulted in the 48,000 trips. Is that
Yes.
correct as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just making sure I'm tracking.
So go ahead.
I was going to say, and as we limit enrollment, you're bringing folks on that have greater needs. So the cost of what they need is more, right? Which is why we're talking about the levy and trying to see, is there an opportunity to be able to use some of those funds to provide more of other core services.
But the Meal on Wheels is not a part of this.
We do fund home delivered meals.
Right. Is that included in your?
Oh, no, this is just for the transportation service.
That's what I wanted.
Great question, thank you.
Understood that that's a
No.
separate program. And that is not,
500.
financial, or you have to have, fit the financial guidelines?
Wasn't sure if today should be.
For home delivers, yes.
Right, okay. Wanna make sure.
So Dan?
So just as a practice, so thank you, Judy. Thank you, Suzanne. And really everybody for listening. Pete, do you have a question?
I was just mostly for staff. We've been doing a ton of work around access, sort of improvements, coordination. How, if at all, does this relate to that work? And part of this is certainly certifying that there are a number of folks who can't use access. We're also working to make access far more useful. Are there opportunities internally to absorb some of this to the access service? Obviously, that's not through the door, it's to the door. But I'm just trying to understand what our changes to access look like and how that impacts this population.
So this group has been involved in the regional paratransit coordination effort, but that effort is a coordinated effort, right? There, we can make it easier for customers to find what they need and so on through all of us getting together. But, ADA transportation is required by FTA is our door to door, right? Not through the door. So I don't necessarily know that if the prerequisite for folks to use the Home 52 system is that they need that physical assistance through the door.
Yeah.
So there's there's already a bright line between folks who would use this system and folks that would use access. So I don't know that improvements to access in terms of time of day or staffing or anything is going to meet those needs.
And what I heard them say was that if a person can use the fixed route system, they have to use the fixed route system. If a person can use access, they have to use access. This is only for their clientele that can't use the others.
And then are we, I enjoyed going to the access facility, however, a couple months ago, and are we sharing the use of our sort of testing ground there for them to be able to do their assessments, or is that an opportunity?
No, it may be an opportunity, but we're not doing that today.
So I can understand this better. Staff is going to be looking at any coordination or opportunity with this program and our program? Is that what we're saying?
So so I'll jump in on that, Gwen. So as a practical matter, this is really a legislative question, right? Before our body. The county has been talking about this for a year and a half, and there is a will at the county level legislatively, but it's within our authority to see if like Suzanne said, the Tax Levy Review Committee would love us to pick 100% of it up, but who wouldn't, right? But the demand is substantially more than it was just 24 months ago, and they knew this demand was coming. So the question really comes down to the pool of dollars that are allocated for senior services, including Meals on Wheels, that are altogether separate than transportation, and what's specifically transportation. And there's some people that say that the verbiage in that levy in issue 7 is broad enough to pick up these services through the door. Others do not. But the question before us is, legislatively, I would recommend and put forth a motion that our staff, today is not a day to ask for dollars.
Okay.
Today's a day to talk about the subject and our will to participate, and where this could go, and whether it be a temporary situation before the senior levy goes back out to the ballot, or whether it's a long-term solution where they're part of the continuum of our services, where the coordination be contracted out basically to a nonprofit that Council on Aging that provides those service. It would complete the continuum with transportation services. Council on Aging providing this. Everything else would be picked up on the other 4 categories that Andy went through. So my question or motion would be request that the staff pursue the numbers and the budgeting to see what we could pick up in terms of dollars, what time frame we could consider. And we don't have to decide this today. It would be, we're not in a rush. We've been talking about it for a year and a half. So this is a little bit different than Pete's, no offense, but so.
This is on the agenda.
But
do we put things on agendas in these meetings?
so I'm just teasing. But I there is a level of need that exists and has existed for many months. So I think I'd want the staff to pursue that and them to have the legislative authorization to do so and report back to us.
Is that a motion or a request? Does there have to be a motion for staff to investigate?
Then make it a motion.
Is there a particular motion?
Make it a motion, and if you look at a legislative mode.
It'll eventually, when it comes to asking for dollars, it'll need to be legislative.
Yeah.
But I thought even the request had to be legislative. No.
I think similarly to what we asked at a previous conversation was direction from the board, interest level from the board. We have a lot of technical things that we would need to explore, right? Especially when it comes to federal regulations against providing transportation, meeting the ADA requirements, impact to the budget, so on and so forth. So if this board was clearly not thinking this was in something that you wanted us to do from a research perspective, we wouldn't spend that time.
Okay.
If we're hearing that you do want us to spend that time, we can start to spend that time and continue to bring information back to this board.
Well, I absolutely want you to spend the time.
That would
That's
be a
how I feel.
request. Okay.
So what do other board members think? Oh, sorry, Chelsea.
Another
you're
thing
about to do that.
That's okay. The only other question I'm wondering is what other metropolitan areas are pursuing these types of partnerships nationally? Can you give me some? I'm just not aware.
Is that something you would want to research?
Or is that part of that will be part of the research?
We can look into that. And this is from the federal transportation planning world, right? We have our fixed route system, and that fixed route system is moving folks at a subsidy somewhere between $6 to $8 a trip, right? Then you have a federally required ADA paratransit system, right? And that's moving folks at around $50 a trip. Anything above and beyond that is called above and beyond ADA transportation. Public transportation providers are not required to provide it. And so it's really up to individual communities to decide if indeed they want to do that. So that will be, there isn't a federal
Mandate?
program in which these types of service that are being provided by other entities and other subcontractors who might have different insurance requirements and all those things. There's a lot to unpack there from a regulatory perspective. And so therefore there isn't a cut and paste national model to how to deal with transportation that is above and beyond ADA requirements.
Okay.
Just to throw my opinion out there, I am constantly reminding people just in my everyday life, just because something is ADA doesn't mean it's accessible, right? So the more I think we can do to make life more accessible for the community, I think fits well within our mission, well within our mandate. As long as we can make it work within the budget, I would be fully supportive of helping out this group as much as we can.
I have a question on the financial side of things.
So Neil, is that a second? I think
Yes.
Neil seconded the motion.
Enthusiastically.
On the financial side of things, it's a 3.4 currently. Is the hope to bring that 3.4 into our budget? Is the hope to absorb part of it? I also hear conversations about opportunities for growth. That number is a bit of a moving target for me that I'd want to get a real sense of.
I don't think we don't have that number today.
But that's one of the things I would want to know.
And we'd have to look at when the levies come up, what the gap is now,
when is
and
senior
what the
services up?
ask should be in the future. It's a 5-year levy. It was passed. Suzanne, do you remember when it was passed?
27. Okay, thanks. That's helpful.
But that is part of what we'd like to have in front of us when we take a vote on it.
So it sounds like from the conversation and specific remarks, there is interest to further discussion, right? Okay.
Yep.
Understood. Great. There's no action items. Sonia has told me that I lost already about a minute ago. So, cheers. Oh. No, I don't think there's an action item.
All right.
Suzanne?
Oh, Suzanne, bye.
Well, thanks for the second anyway, Neil.
1 minute. Good catcher. All right, I think we can adjourn then.
She was gone.
All right.
She's like, oh, y'all done. See ya. Got stuff to do.